What's up, guys? What's Shrimp Po' Boy? I'm going to just go ahead and read off the script. I made multiple recording attempts, and I'm just getting a little tired of it now. Anyway, re-recorded this multiple times, but anyway. Let's continue this, shall we? These are the most awesome mods, the best mods you could put to a car, and the advocacy for ending private ownership of vehicles to quote-unquote combat climate change, which is a political grift. It's exactly what it is. It has nothing to do with the environment. It's to do with using the environment as a grift narrative to establish global socialism. That's all it's for. And the ending of private ownership of vehicles is basically another harm to your property rights. As a libertarian socialist friend of mine already realized, pretty well put it, you know. Look at the historical examples of taking workplaces by force under a single authority and distributing it. This kind of system was always going to end up in villainy, evil, and tragedy to those who were screwed over by it, where none was needed. Without a right to your property, without a right to private property, you'd not be able to own your body. But having your body being property of someone else is textbook definition of slavery. If slavery is cool and good, you know, you can't exactly have the working class be liberated, now can you? And the use of socialist, and that's what he told me in DMs as of today, and I'm going to give him a shout out. His name, he calls himself the Sun. And he's pretty awesome for that. Thank you, my guy. Thank you very much. You're good. You're a great guy. Anyway, and this is another big fuck you to the WEF. A big middle finger to them and the FUDs that work with them. Now, before I go any further into the actual meat of the subject, I was sick for almost 2 weeks with the COVID, and due to my having a history of asthma, and as a child I got infected with chronic bronchitis infection, which does have some degree of long-term unfortunate effects from it. I will say it's a bitch, and I have residual congestion that I have to expel, and that's a pain in my ass. Hence the occasional coughing you'll witness. So anyway, before I go any further, I will give you a couple of warnings in the meat of the subject. One, you will encounter problems with the emission scrubbing equipment bolted to your engine in vehicles that are mandated by government regulations, while they in themselves, in the case of reducing and lowering pollution, that aspect being a good thing, they have a two-directional way of working. If there's less oxygen coming out the tailpipes, that oxygen sensor will signal the computer to pull back on fuel. If I just use plasma ignition in a car, that's going to make a cleaner combustion. It's going to make it quicker and happen and get the work done in a shorter time span. So it'll drive the efficiency of the engine up, so it'll run cooler. The coolness and the oxygen density the oxygen density going up is going to send a false "oh fuck, we're running too lean" signal to the computer. It's signal to throw more fuel in. If I preheat the fuel to any degree, and that's going to do the same thing, because the preheated fuel vaporizes more completely upon compression and then ignition. Less droplets are going to be there and more vapor. Excuse me. And if there's more vapor, the shit will burn more quickly, and less droplets will be there needed to vaporize and temp control and quench the flame itself. Because if there's more vapor already, it's going to burn quicker. It's going to burn more completely, right? So, and both carburetors and fuel injectors do this. They shoot into the combustion chamber both a mix of vapor and tiny droplets. It's not one or the other. So it does, but it suits a mixture. The vapor part of the mix ignites. That's the way it works. But the thing is, so anyways, if there's more oxygen in the tailpipe, the computer is going to be signaled, oh fuck, throw more fuel in to make what the programming of the emissions equipment and computer system is was programmed to consider normal. It's going to go back to that. 2. There are only 2 devices I know of that do not violate the legal code of the I got it right here. The Clean Air Act about tampering with with the emissions equipment. And the cool thing is, I already talked about this. I got a video. I want you to check it out if you're willing. Please do. And due to the fact that if you got a fuel injection system, that the one device has 2 variations, the other has 2 variations, and it can be used at the air intake side. But I'll go into them later. 2 of the things in here are not technically mods. They would allow you to keep the signaling of the emissions control normal while the emissions control could still do its thing, but it won't have as much to clean up because you're going to have less coming out the tailpipe. So anyway, let's get into it. Oh, by the way, these 2 things that allow these other mods to be able to work, they can add. They have an after. Though the electronic fuel injection enhancer counterpart for fuel injectors can give an aftermarket function to fuel injectors, so it could potentially be protected under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. Anyway. Here we go. All the engine mods. This is it. Again, I'm going to make this a multi-episode thing. Number 1, the vacuum gauge. The vacuum gauge is the grandpappy of all fuel economy instruments. Installing and using one remains a cost-effective way to help a driver fine-tune driving habits and certain driving tasks they have to use and fine-tune their driving while doing those tasks for better effectiveness and fuel economy, particularly driving with load. You can go to the 100 plus hypermiling tips. As well as aiding in efficiency, it is very useful as an indicator for general health of an engine. Pretty cool, right? It's pretty kick-ass. Number 2, fuel pre-vaporizers. When using them correctly, they could vaporize fuel into a fully gaseous state before being mixed in the air intake charge that will be used for the combustion of said fuels. Massive mileage claims have been made, and people on YouTube such as Charlie Chopman and his other channel, The Vapor Kid, Tyson Capel, and several others have repeated these concepts and made them work in small engines and on vehicles. Although they're simplistic, clunky, in their designs and need some adjusting and tuning and modern and better and made adjustments and stuff to be able to make them work better, they work, and they work pretty damn well. And I have changed my mind on some of the extreme mileage claims. Since my Truth About Fuel Pre-Vaporizers videos several years ago, I've changed my mind due to more proof showing up and more research I've put into this stuff, and the science backing up the various principles applied to the fuel pre-vaporizers, such as boiling under vacuum with heat, but pulling a vacuum and heating together, boiling plus pressure, cracking heavier molecules while evaporating the lighter stuff, etc., etc. Making, instead of a vapor, it'd be a vapor, hydrocarbon gas mix. The aerodynamic mods for vehicles and ECU control carburetors and for four-stroke engines, proving this is more likely possible without cars being made into hybrids. And the fact that a automotive technician had spent around $16,000, 16 fucking grand, making basically a thermal cracking unit that ran his carbureted GMC 1973 pickup truck for well over 200 miles per gallon. He basically figured out how to turn gasoline into highly pressurized synthetic natural gas. But again, $16,000 is not very practical now, is it? Now, if you're using this kind of thing as a supplement to a regular carburetor modified with, for instance, modified with a regular carburetor enhancer system, or it may be slight leaning of the idle and throttle fuel mixture screws. Slight leaning, just slight, will allow you to reduce the fuel droplets going into the air intake with vapor, like the Hyco 2A. I will be recommending you please check out. Because you can connect it to the gasoline tank, have an automatically maintained fuel level. The fuel gets its most volatile stuff vaporized out of it, but they can be dumped into the main fuel line going into the carburetor and to get preheated and then vaporized at the intake, and then fresh fuel from the tank goes in the Hyco 2A canister. All the while it draws a teeny bit of intake vacuum, or intake suction, to bleed fresh air into it to bubble the gasoline, or say gasohol mix of whatever blend you use, so it'll vaporize all over again and acts more like a self-regulating secondary fuel tank as well. The Hyco 2A vaporizer works so well, also as a method to protect against vapor lock. It's pretty kick-ass. You can do all that with just using the Hyco done right. Number 3, fuel preheating. Fuel preheating gasoline, ethanol, higher mixed alcohol, or blends of these will allow them to vaporize more easily, which allows a better mixture forming and charge quality by using less fuel to fill the same airspace. This allows better burning and recycling of heat energy to make better efficiency for fuel injected or carbureted engines. These effects will allow you to reduce certain forms of pollution and get the most use out of the BTUs. A diesel engine, just throwing it out there because I'm going to be mentioning this again in my better running, cleaner and better running diesel engines video. 50 to 60 degrees Celsius is best as far as I've seen in research papers. While for gasoline engines, just using the coolant line coming out of the engine going to the radiator, using that section in that line to preheat the gasoline up anywhere from 115 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit maximum. To preheat the fuel going to the carburetor, or in the fuel injection case, the injector pumps, will increase performance and reduce emissions and increase mileage, especially when paired with cooled EGR in this next mod, which number 4, I meant to say, plasma ignition. Plasma ignition takes the resistance out of the modern car ignition, puts diodes from the positive connection coming off the positive side of the ignition coil to the spark plug using MSD's ignition module or something similar for a stronger capacitive discharge aspect that connects it directly to the coil and the battery or magneto, and ideally if you got a magneto, if it can charge the capacitors or your auto, and can be driven directly by the engine, no need for belts. If that's possible, that would be great. It'd be better. And if you could fabricate such a thing and make it work, you can use that to power the capacitors for the capacitive discharge ignition aspect of the system, where you can full-blown convert it. Then use that to modify your circuitry, get some help from electricians and mechanics for that if you need to. And use the right ignition diagram. And it will turn your spark into a small plasma ball. I've talked about this multiple times on my channel already. Then using the spark plugs from extremespark.com will capitalize off of this effect. The plasma arc will spread through the flame. You start the flame front, make a stronger flame front, and it'll make a stronger and more stable burn, which means leaner fuel air mixtures. For the same power is even more possible than before. Pair it with the steam or water injection to increase the power by allowing plasmolysis of a certain part of the water vapor and burning that oxygen to enhance the combustion even further and really hasten it. Plasma ignition has been shown to burn water mist vapor by plasmolysis and combustion of oxyhydrogen on footage. An all-metal radiator, number 5, with more rows. Scotty Kilmer said this and it showed very well. If you use radiators that are all metal and have more rows, the radiators built like this will cool your engine better, will last longer. You don't have to worry about parts dry rotting and all other kind of fuckery going on. Number 6, cold air intakes or intercoolers. On older vehicle engines, this could work as long as you have increased airspeed. You machine the intake tubing to narrow downward gradually and evenly as possible to fit the factory air intake manifold and make the tubes inside of them as smooth as possible. To lessen possibility, lessen the air friction. So it'll flow in and it'll speed up as it goes to the air intake manifold. And you can use thermal heat shield heatshield.com's heat shielding tech to thermally insulate the outside of the intake pipe to keep the air cooled and dense more as it runs. Now that is very possible as well. An intercooler, if you're going to use a turbocharger, it will condense the air after it's been compressed by the air blower side of a turbo. Or 2 if you use sequential turboing. Which means more fuel could be used, the preheated fuel can be used to make more of a bang, as preheated fuel can expand in the air charge more easily. And vaporize more likely, using the coldness of, Now here's an idea, using the fucking coldness of pressure drop CNG or just lower pressure drop fuel gases due to how cold they are could cool the air immensely, make it icy. Now with that little idea given to you, I'm going to end episode 1 here and now. I think you could see a bunch of implications with pressure drop fuel gas, coldness to cool down the air intake quite a bit before even being fed into the engine to burn. That can work a lot of ways across multiple engine designs and engine types. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you in episode 2.